Okay, back at God King's tail end of the 7th turn. This is round 3. I didn't get very far in the first video, but the Babylonians strike back into Kadesh, and this time the Egyptians don't have a way to stop them. They face them, fight them. They win the roll-off for who gets the chariot battle. Great, right? I mean, they caused like 16 casualties on the chariot battle, I think it was. Was it that high? Yeah, I think it was indeed. It was close to that, 15, 16 casualties. Huge, huge blow. Doesn't matter. Both sides are still at the max. And dice roll, the Egyptians have an advantage due to the terrain, but they still end up a point below on the pips what the Babylonians are able to muster. Doesn't matter if those were those 15 other casualties. It ends up being a 17-15 battle. Babylonians win, and they get a point, and they drive the Egyptians back and out. Great. I think there's, they can still retreat too. Okay. Kadesh is now under siege. The Babylonians don't get a chance to roll because they fought a battle there. But they're in a position to kind of take it away from the Egyptians. Now we'll see what the Egyptians can do on the backside of that. Well, what the Egyptians can do is they can attack right back. And in this case, nobody won the chariot battle, but the Egyptians massively outrolled here, getting 22-15. They got the +1 because they still do control the local militia or whatever, and they just basically wiped out the entire chariot contingent of the Kassite force. Now, that's an option the Kassites took because chariots, if you lose them towards the end of the turn, don't matter. But it's not really the end of the turn, and this gives a huge advantage to the Egyptians. Of course, the problem is, do the Egyptians want to drive north? In which case, maybe they're open to the Hatti, and the Hatti might attack them, or do they want to drive eastward into the Babylonians? I'm not sure. The Egyptians had to leave their guard behind because they wanted to bring all their divisions into play. Let's see what happens. They played a card they would love to have right now, favor Vanu, which would allow them to activate multiple generals. They could send the king forward to attack and keep the Babylonians on the run. They're in pretty bad shape. And then send one more division up, maybe to grab Carchemish or something like that. They can't do that now, though. They threw that card away. And the Hatti drove into the weakened Assyrians, defeated them. There's 1 unit left as they fall back here. Another territory goes. Mitanni's nobody's game right now. The Assyrians tried to play cards, they tried to withdraw, they tried to do everything, and none of it worked. Now they get their chance to go. They've still got a division back here, but I don't think that's enough to handle this whole force, so they're kind of in a troubled position. And to end things, the Assyrians come to a quick deal with the Hatti. They're going to grant the Hatti the right to take Mitanni, own it, and then they're agreeing to both move against the Babylonians with an eventual plan to hit Egypt between them. The Assyrians aren't very happy about this. The Babylonians are a lot less happy about this because they're losing a major province here. They're probably going to pull out. And this may be just giving the game to the Egyptians, but it felt like the game was going to the Egyptians no matter what, the way things were. The Hatti absolutely need to take down everyone because everyone's ahead of them. All right, well, we're moving into round 4. We still don't have a leader for either the Babylonians, a replacement leader for the Babylonians or the Assyrians. They've both avoided taking that bullet so far, but it is likely to happen. Okay, so the Kassites started their turn off with this Ilku card they've been holding. They've been counting on this. It recuperated 6 of their units, improving a couple of their divisions. Thought they could maybe knock the Egyptian army back on its ass this way. Of course, without chariots, that's kind of tough, and they're not going to have those. Moving further, the Egyptians stormed up and made it to Carchemish, where they actually succeeded in a siege. So they now own Carchemish province. Going to the Hatti, what did they play? They played a popular upheaval card, throwing Canaan back into revolt, and therefore kind of hosing the Egyptian player. As we get late in the game and there's a clear victor or a leader, it's kind of nice to be able to knock them back. And they're in a lot of trouble. If we can knock them back, this combined attack on the Babylonians should work very well, and then it'll put maybe the Hatti straight up against the Egyptians in a shot at something, I don't know what. And then the final thing was our Assyrians, who played a 3-point card and grabbed some of Mari from the Babylonians. They laid siege, they didn't get it, they'll have a +1 on the final round, but even if they succeed, they're not going to get Mari. All they'll be doing is taking that city, so they may not want it so badly. Hard to tell. All right, on to the 5th. The Kassites, and I'm not sure why they did this, but they got their leader slightly worse, mainly a little worse in combat. But they played this false missive to prevent that from happening. So the succession didn't happen, and the Assyrians showed up last turn. Then they played Oriental Cruelty, which allowed them to basically grab a number of these Mari territories and cut the Assyrians off further. Now this space they took, well, doesn't really help them much because it's going to fall to the Hatti, almost guaranteed. But there wasn't much else they could do. 1, 2, or 2, 3. They could grab something up here. They could have taken Mukish away from the Hatti, which might have been of some value, but they kind of like having the Hatti up against the Egyptians as kind of a potential there. They took the territory from the Egyptians, but the Egyptians can come right back and take it back. So that's not really going to do much. The problem for the Egyptians, of course, is they're not connected. They're going to be thrown back here and have to fight their way back. All right, speaking of which, it's their turn. Well, the Egyptians had an Oriental Cruelty card as well, and they played theirs to great effect. 1, they took the space in Carchemish. That gives them the value for this. Then they took 2 spaces over in Mukish. Did they have to? Not really. They could have left that as Hatti and slid up and taken Ishua. And actually, I think they're going to do that instead. Because really what they're looking at right now is to grab the victory points. And, oh wait, 1, 2, 3... No, they couldn't have. Okay, so they'll take Hatti, or Mukish instead from the Hatti. There was nothing great of value they could take down here, but this is going to be very hard to take from them. And they gained an extra victory point, maybe some extra resources, and definitely a strong play. But things went badly for the Assyrian-Hatti alliance that recently formed. The Hatti moved in and laid siege down to Wakashukaki or whatever, Washukani, and failed to take it. The Assyrians had a lot of choices in hand. In fact, they had a card, they were sitting on popular upheaval. They could have grabbed a province, say Carchemish, away from the Egyptians, that they'd otherwise be scoring points for. Notice the Egyptians aren't getting Amaru, though. They take a fair hit on points this turn. They could have cleared everything out of Mari had they wanted to. That doesn't really help them. Instead, they chose to... and the biggest thing would have been to hit the Egyptians and leave the Babylonians alone. Taking Mari is valuable because that's a step away where they can take the rest of the province more easily, because it's fairly easy to take province when there's nothing to besiege. Well, they failed, even with the +1 bonus that they had, and that means they're going to be driven back into this tiny little area. That's all they have left, and the Babylonians actually managed to survive this double attack. And now the world's a little different. The Hatti are probably easily convinced to move against the Egyptians, for example. Although that's going to be tough when we come to Carchemish if the Babylonians are still out there. The Assyrians, on the other hand, are kind of in a... they must support Egypt one way or the other. Anyway, that's the end of the rounds, and I'm just going to score up the victory points. Well, let's see what we got. 12 for the Egyptians, 14 for the Babylonians, 12 for the Hadi. I think they get to pick before the Egyptians because the Egyptians have a higher total. And then our good Assyrians down at 7. It's, well, it doesn't bode well for for stopping Egypt. Egypt looks like it's in very good shape. But we'll see. I'll score up the totals, but I'm going to load this one up, short as it may be. Well, we got a few moments. Let's take a look at those totals. The Hadi in the worst place, 73 points. Above them, 86 for Assyria, 88 for Babylonia. Kind of close there, but 106 for Egypt. I don't know if in 2 turns can you make that up. Yeah, if you pretty much drive them to the sea. But that's really what it's got to be, and I don't see that happening. It just, you know, there's always someone standing there in opposition. The way this game is designed, it's almost impossible for everyone to gang up on someone. What can you offer the Assyrians in trade for leaving you alone? You know, you got to give them something, right? You can't just say, yeah, you're doing okay, right? They're not. All right, let's see if they want to keep their card. It's a good, useful card. I think they're going to hold on to it because they only get 1 card they get to hold on to for the rest of the game, because this is the second to last turn they're going into here. And then the Babylonians get theirs recharged. What about the Hittites? They have a card there. Yeah, they don't need that. Their leader's not that good, and their upcoming leader actually is 2 extra movement points. You know, there's just so many good things. I don't think I'd wait on that. So we're going to start a new turn, and this one's loading up.